Right now, as you read this, you're hurtling through space at 67,000 miles per hour aboard a rock we call Earth. But just 400 kilometers above your head, closer than the drive from New York to Washington, floats an invisible constellation of 3,000 mechanical sentinels. They guide every Uber to its destination. They process 10 billion credit card transactions a day. They spot hurricanes while there's still whispers in the wind. We've always looked up at space as humanity's final frontier. Pristine, peaceful, infinite. But here's what should terrify you. At this very moment, there are weapons in orbit designed to obliterate these guardians. Weapons that could plunge our entire civilization into darkness faster than you can finish watching this video. What I'm about to show you isn't science fiction. It's happening right now, in the silence above. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow, reach for your phone, and nothing? No signal. Your car's navigation screen shows a spinning wheel. The ATM down the street has gone dark. Air traffic controllers watch in horror as thousands of planes lose position data simultaneously. This isn't a power outage. It's what happens when our satellites die. Here's the scale of our dependence. Military commanders rely on space assets for 90% of their battlefield intelligence. Without satellites, a precision-guided missile becomes a very expensive dumb bomb. Modern agriculture, the kind that feeds 7 billion people, depends on GPS-guided tractors that plant seeds with centimeter precision. Lose that, and crop yields plummet by 30%. The numbers are staggering. Every single day without satellites would hemorrhage $13 billion from the global economy. That's not a typo. $13 billion, evaporating like morning dew. Our power grids synchronize using GPS timing signals accurate to nanoseconds. Without them, the electrical frequencies drift apart like musicians losing the beat, triggering cascading blackouts. But here's the revelation that keeps defense planners awake at night. You don't need to destroy all 3,000 satellites. Take out just 50 carefully chosen targets. The right GPS satellites, key communication relays, critical weather monitors, and you can reduce a superpower to chaos. Imagine Los Angeles traffic with no working signals. Picture container ships wandering blind through fog. See farmers watching crops wither because irrigation systems can't function. As Space Force General John Raymond warned Congress, our adversaries have studied how we fight. They know space is our Achilles heel. Above us orbits a shell of invisible infrastructure as vital as any highway or power plant. The GPS constellation, 31 satellites dancing in precise formation 20,200 kilometers high, each carrying atomic clocks so accurate they lose 1 second every 300,000 years. Lower down, at 550 kilometers, Starlink's growing swarm provides internet to Ukrainian defenders and Amazon villages alike. In the shadows between them lurk classified reconnaissance satellites. Their cameras so powerful they can read license plates from orbit. These aren't just machines, they're humanity's new nervous system, carrying signals that bind our civilization together. So naturally, someone figured out how to cut the nerves. November 25th, 2019, Plesetsk Cosmodrome, Russia. In the perpetual twilight of the Arctic Circle, a Soyuz rocket tears into the sky carrying what Russia called a satellite inspector. They named it Cosmos 2542. But this was no ordinary spacecraft. It was pregnant with something sinister. Weeks later, Cosmos 2542 performed a maneuver that made American space trackers stop breathing. Like a Russian nesting doll revealing its secret, it birthed a smaller satellite, Cosmos 2543. This cosmic offspring immediately began stalking A235, one of America's most classified spy satellites. For months, the Russian hunter shadowed its American prey, matching every orbital adjustment. maintaining position just dozens of kilometers away, close enough to read the serial numbers if it had eyes. Then came July 15, 2020. While the world battled COVID, Cosmos 2543 did something unprecedented. It fired a projectile into space, not at a target, but as a demonstration. The message was unmistakable. Russia had tested a space-based kinetic weapon. For the first time in history, one satellite had shot at the void, proving it could shoot at another satellite. The physics of orbital assassination are elegantly terrifying. At 7 kilometers per second, 10 times faster than a bullet, even a marble becomes a bomb. Kinetic energy equals half the mass times velocity squared, and at orbital speeds, that squared term turns pebbles into grenades. No explosives needed. Speed itself is the weapon. Meanwhile, 8,000 kilometers away, China unveiled its own orbital predator. SJ-17, launched with a robotic arm that Chinese officials claim is for servicing satellites and cleaning space debris. But space warfare experts see something else: a grappling weapon. In April 2021, U.S. Space Command's General James Dickinson testified that SJ-17's arm could grab and disable enemy satellites. The spacecraft has been practicing. Tracking data shows SJ-17 performing an intricate ballet with other Chinese satellites, approaching as close as 1.67 kilometers, kissing distance in space terms. Each approach is a rehearsal. Each maneuver teaches Chinese operators how to hunt. Think about the implications. Every nation launching satellite servicing technology is simultaneously developing satellite killing capability. It's like giving everyone Swiss Army knives and hoping they only use the screwdriver. The same robotic arm that could fix a broken solar panel could just as easily rip one off. The same thruster that enables inspection could enable collision. We've entered an era where every spacecraft is potentially both shepherd and wolf, where missions of mercy and malice look identical until the moment of truth. But some nations decided subtlety was overrated. November 15, 2021, 6:46 a.m. Moscow time. In the steppes of northern Russia, an A235 Nudol missile erupts from its launcher, accelerating through the atmosphere at 4 kilometers per second. Its target, Cosmos 1408, a defunct Soviet signals intelligence satellite orbiting 480 kilometers above Earth. At 6:48 a.m. impact. The collision released energy equivalent to a truck hitting a wall at 25,000 miles per hour. Cosmos 1408 disintegrated into a cloud of shrapnel, 1,500 pieces large enough to track, hundreds of thousands too small to see but still lethal. Each fragment became a bullet, screaming through space at orbital velocity. 93 minutes later, alarms shrieked aboard the International Space Station. NASA flight controllers in Houston issued an emergency command. All crew to spacecraft. Prepare for possible evacuation. 4 Americans, 2 Russians, and 1 German astronaut scrambled into their Dragon and Soyuz capsules, sealing the hatches behind them. For 2 orbits, 3 terrifying hours, they waited to see if Russian debris would puncture their home. Think about that image. Russian cosmonauts sheltering from their own country's weapon test, floating in a capsule while shrapnel from their nation's missile whizzed past outside. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson called it unthinkable that Russia would endanger its own people to demonstrate a weapon. But Russia wasn't the first to turn satellites into shotgun blasts. January 11, 2007. China fired a kinetic kill vehicle at its own weather satellite, Fengyun 1C, creating the worst debris disaster in space history. The satellite exploded into 3,000 trackable fragments and an estimated 40,000 smaller pieces. Here's the truly horrifying part. That Chinese debris is still up there, 17 years later. The International Space Station has dodged Fengyun fragments 5 times, most recently in November 2024. Each piece orbits Earth every 90 minutes at 17,500 miles per hour. A permanent minefield that will remain lethal for decades. This is the nightmare of the Kessler syndrome, proposed by NASA scientist Donald Kessler in 1978. One collision creates debris. That debris causes more collisions. Those create more debris. The cascade continues until low Earth orbit becomes an impenetrable wall of whirling shrapnel, trapping humanity on Earth like prisoners behind bars of our own making. Ground-based weapons add another layer of dread. Somewhere in Russia and China, classified facilities house lasers powerful enough to blind satellites from Earth. The physics are simple. Coherent light maintains focus across thousands of kilometers. A brief pulse can fry sensitive optics, turning billion-dollar spy satellites into expensive space junk without creating a single piece of debris. The message is clear. You don't need to go to space to wage war in space. But America decided if space was becoming a battlefield, they needed soldiers up there. December 20th, 2019. In the Oval Office, President Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act, creating the first new military branch since 1947. The United States Space Force wasn't born from science fiction dreams. It was forged from strategic nightmares. Deep inside Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado, behind 25-ton blast doors and 2,000 feet of granite, the Combined Space Operations Center monitors 48,000 objects orbiting Earth. Every piece of debris larger than a softball, tracked. Every satellite's orbit, calculated. Every close approach, analyzed. The operators call it the catalog, but it's really a battle map. The Space Force deploys assets that sound fictional but are terrifyingly real. The GSSAP satellites, Geosynchronous Space Situational Awareness Program, are essentially space cops, patrolling 36,000 kilometers above the equator. They can rendezvous with any satellite in geosynchronous orbit, photograph it, analyze it, and report back. Think of them as detective satellites, investigating suspicious activity in the cosmic neighborhood. Then there's the X-37B, Boeing's unmanned spaceplane that makes science fiction jealous. This mysterious craft has completed 6 classified missions, with the longest lasting 908 days. Nearly 2.5 years doing what? The Space Force won't say. But a vehicle that can change orbits, deploy unknown payloads, and land like an airplane gives America capabilities our adversaries can only guess at. Operation Olympic Defender brings 7 nations into a secret space alliance. The US, UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Germany, and France share satellite data, coordinate responses to threats, and plan for the unthinkable: space warfare. At Vandenberg Space Force Base, officers from these nations sit side by side, watching for the first signs of attack. The challenge isn't just technical, it's philosophical. Space Force doctrine now speaks of space superiority and space domain awareness, military terms for what was once peaceful territory. We've militarized infinity itself. The motto of the 75th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Squadron reads, "In God we trust, all others we monitor." But here's what should chill you. Attribution in space is nearly impossible. If debris hits a satellite, was it an attack or an accident? If a satellite goes dark, was it hostile action or equipment failure? In the vacuum of space, there are no fingerprints, no forensic evidence. A space Pearl Harbor could happen, and we might never prove who pulled the trigger. The transformation is complete. Space is no longer humanity's shared sanctuary. It's the ultimate high ground, and everyone's racing to claim it. We stand at a crossroads between the cosmos that could unite us and the battlefield that could destroy us. The same realm that carries our hopes to Mars and brings hurricane warnings to our phones has become a powder keg, waiting for a spark. The tragedy is that we know exactly where this leads. Every war game, every simulation, every strategic analysis reaches the same conclusion. Once space conflict begins, it spirals beyond control. One destroyed satellite creates debris that threatens all satellites. One nation's defensive move looks like another's first strike. The cascade begins. And within hours, low Earth orbit becomes a graveyard. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty, signed when only 2 nations could reach orbit, proclaimed space the province of all mankind. Today, with 90 countries operating satellites and private companies launching thousands more, that treaty feels like a gentleman's agreement in a room full of armed strangers. Here's the future we're sleepwalking toward. The next Pearl Harbor won't announce itself with explosions you can hear or flames you can see. It will begin with a GPS icon spinning endlessly on your phone. Your credit card will stop working. Your car will forget where it is. The lights will flicker and fail. And by the time you step outside and look up at the stars to understand what happened, the war will already be over. We'll have won or lost in the time it takes to order coffee. The satellites that bind our world together have become the threads our enemies can pull to unravel everything. We've built a civilization that depends entirely on machines orbiting in a realm we're turning into a battlefield. Do you think we can still prevent the weaponization of space? Or have we already passed the point of no return? Is your country prepared for a world where the invisible infrastructure above suddenly goes dark? Let me know which revelation about space warfare surprised you most, because I guarantee your government is thinking about all of them. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more stories where history, technology, and human ambition collide. Thanks for watching.